Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met on the sidelines of the G20 summit. Prime Minister Narendra Modi gave a stern message over rising Khalistani propaganda in Canada. Justin Trudeau, while speaking to the media, said Canada will always defend the freedom of expression, freedom of conscience and freedom of peaceful protest. He further added that his government will always prevent violence and push back against hatred. Meanwhile, a pro-Khalistan referendum was held in a Gurudwara in Surrey in the backdrop of the two leaders holding talks over existing tensions.
They both came up over the years with Prime Minister Modi. We've had many conversations on both of those issues. Obviously, Canada will always defend freedom of expression, freedom of conscience, freedom of peaceful protest. That's something that's extremely important to us. At the same time as we're always there to prevent violence, to push back against hatred. I think on the issue of the community, it's important to remember that the actions of the few do not represent the entire community or Canada. The flip side of it, we also highlighted the importance of respecting the rule of law, and we did talk about foreign interference.
And shifting focus to the US presidential race, now Vivek Ramaswamy has positioned himself as the hardline immigration candidate in the 2024 US presidential fight. Vivek Ramaswamy has said that he will deport US citizens born to undocumented migrants. He has further said that the entire family unit will be deported. Ramaswamy's statement is a direct challenge to the concept of birthright citizenship. Now, birthright citizenship has been an established constitutional right for more than a century. Under the 14th Amendment, all persons born in the United States, without exception, are granted citizenship automatically. However, Ramaswamy believes that the language of the amendment can be interpreted to exclude the children of people who cross the border to enter and reside in the United States illegally. His position could very well end up being a repeat performance of Donald Trump's promises to the extreme far right on the issue of immigration during his 2016 campaign. Trump had pledged to complete the construction of the fencing across the entire US-Mexico border at the latter's expense. So that is the pitch now being reiterated by Vivek Ramaswamy, who is now taking a direct shot at birthright citizenship. I'm joined by my guest, Spencer Critchley, pro-democratic political commentator on the broadcast. Thank you, Spencer, for joining us on the broadcast when it comes to this firebrand rising star in the Republican camp on the road to the fight for the White House. How do you see Vivek Ramaswamy's pitch to become Donald Trump's running mate?
Well, he seems to be, of course, he won't admit that that's what he's doing, but it seems clear that that's probably what he's doing, trying to become Donald Trump's vice presidential running mate. And he's doing it by being the mini-me version of Donald Trump, to refer to the movie Austin Powers. You know, it's the usual fear and hate mongering directed towards immigrants, or often it's black people, or it's lesbians, gays, bisexual, transgendered people. It's any group who can be defined as different and towards which you can target people's fear and hatred. And this is just the playbook that demagogues have used throughout history. You identify some group of others who are supposedly a mortal threat to the purity and innocence of the nation, and mobilize people's hatred against them, and the only point is to serve the power-seeking aims of the demagogue who's exploiting the worst aspects of human nature. It should be beneath the dignity of any candidate for public office, especially in a liberal democracy like the United States, which would be nothing without immigrants. There is no such thing as American culture without immigration. It's immigrants plus the Native Americans who were already here and who were tragically displaced from their land. There is no American culture without immigrants. For example, Vivek Ramaswamy's parents, who were immigrants from India, and Paul Soros, the Hungarian immigrant, who founded the fellowship, which funded Vivek Ramaswamy's graduate school education. Paul Soros, the older brother of George Soros, who is one of the favorite villains targeted because he's Jewish, of the sort of Trumpist crowd in the United States. The whole thing is ugly and hateful, and far beneath the dignity of any liberal democracy.
Right, but I remember MSNBC was able to corner Vivek Ramaswamy on that, but that 50,000 grant is just a drop in the ocean. He was anyway a millionaire by that time when he went for that grant. But Spencer, decode this for us. I've seen Vivek Ramaswamy doing the rounds of the different kind of like media shows, or the different Democrat-leaning shows as well. He's been able to effectively call out the kind of radical natures of woke culture. I saw that interview of his on the Breakfast Club where very ridiculous questions were being put at him that, you know, what is your leadership history? Were you, you know, student president in school? While he pointed out that he's been a corporate leader for the longest amount of time. And he was able to dismantle a lot of the, you know, radical woke kind of arguments, especially when it comes to, you know, surrounding Black Lives Matter, even pitches coming in from certain black leaders. He was able to kind of ridicule them when it came to basic common sense. And this is where I feel the Democrats lose when it comes to making an argument against Republicans. You have certain Democratic voices who are so far left that even the moderates in the Democrat alliance are like, what are you talking about? And Vivek Ramaswamy has some appeal towards them. Certainly among Indian Americans also, he's quite a rising star.
Yes, and let me note, you mentioned that the Soros grant that he took, he was already rich when he took it. That's part of the moral bankruptcy of the whole thing. He didn't need the money, but he took it anyway. And now he's profiting on hatred directed towards immigrants like himself. I disagree with your characterization of his attacks on wokeism. There is a woke left, which does represent an anti-liberal fringe of the left. And by far, most liberals of every description, whether they're on the progressive left or on the libertarian right, anybody who believes in liberalism rejects the extreme woke left, which doesn't represent a branch of liberalism at all. However, this is part of the hatred that these folks are exploiting. The origin of the word woke comes from the Black American community many decades ago. So there's two meanings of woke. One is non-ideological. It comes from the days of Jim Crow with lynching and segregation, and it just meant stay awake and aware of the dangers from racial injustice. Nobody who believes in the American idea can possibly be against the idea that Black people and other minorities should be woke, so to speak, to the risks they face from discrimination and injustice to this day. And they leverage this tiny fringe of the radical left that is illiberal and also has appropriated the word woke and claim that that's some kind of problem. But what they're really doing is leveraging fear and hatred of Black people and other minorities. This is the whole demagogue's playbook. And as I say, it's just revolting. I agree that liberals need to repudiate this dogmatic, intolerant version of the left. But as I say, this is far from the mainstream. Whereas on Vivek Ramaswamy's version of the right, it has become the absolute mainstream under the leadership of Donald Trump, the most anti-liberal, anti-democratic president we've had certainly since Andrew Johnson after the Civil War, and I would say even worse than Andrew Johnson. He is essentially, I think it's accurate to call Donald Trump a fascist and a gangster, and he is the leadership, he is the leader of the Republican Party at the moment.
Right, but Spencer, those narratives that you're calling, the fringe left, they do take center stage when it comes to very popular, Democrat-leaning media platforms like the Breakfast Club, like certain, primetime shows as well. They do tend to take center stage in those narratives, which is why he gains that much traction among the Republicans and even Democrat
but it's completely
moderates.
Dishonest.
Right, but my final question to you is, of course, Donald Trump is miles ahead of anyone else in the Republican race. And Vivek Ramaswamy said that, if he ever became president, he would pardon Donald Trump. Also, when it comes to the entire Mike Pence question, what he did, before the January 6 riots, Vivek Ramaswamy says, I would have done it differently. Do you think when it comes to his kind of love for Donald Trump, he's given away the plot right there?
Absolutely. I mean, this is lawlessness. This is authoritarianism. It's ethnic nationalist authoritarianism. This is what drove the Confederacy to secede from the United States and start the Civil War. This is what produced, and I know it's an extreme reference, but it's accurate, not in terms of the damage done, but in terms of the movement behind it. This is what drove the rise of fascist Italy, Nazi Germany, and fascist movements in much of the rest of Europe, as well as in Imperial Japan. It's the same thing. You identify some supposedly pure ethnic nation that needs to be defended from outsiders and corrupting influences, and you use that to mobilize fear and hatred for your own pure self-interest. It's just beneath contempt. Donald Trump attempted to overthrow American democracy. He faces 91 indictments because of that, but these folks want to tear down the rule of law and make it okay to have an anti-democratic criminal authoritarian be the leader of the world's oldest democracy. It's mind-boggling that he's anywhere near the possibility of being reelected, possibly from a jail cell.
Right, but that is the state of American politics, that he's still a rock star in the Republican camp. Thank you, Spencer, for joining us on the broadcast and decoding the political dynamics surrounding the US presidential race.